Welcome to Smithville Chamber Chatter, coming to you from historic Smithville, Texas. We're here to talk about all things Smithville, including upcoming events, updates and tips for and about local businesses, important news, election updates, and more. Brought to you by the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce, I'm your host, April Daniels. Welcome to our podcast. Good afternoon and welcome to the Smithville Chamber Chatter with your host, April Daniels. We are excited to be continuing our Chamber Chatter podcast sponsored by the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Elgin Courier. Our guest today is Judge Pape. We appreciate, as always, the judge's willingness to answer questions and keep the people of Smithville and Bastrop County informed. Good afternoon, Judge Pape, and thank you for being our guest on the Smithville Chamber Chatter podcast.
Well, good afternoon to you, April, and I'm honored to be one of your first guests and happy to talk with you this afternoon.
Well, thank you again. I know our listeners would like to hear from you today about the county's response to the coronavirus COVID-19 crisis we're all facing right now.
All right. Well, I'm happy to talk about that. I do want to say that I love Smithville as a community. I've often said that Smithville is the busiest little town in Texas, and y'all do keep things active down there, keep everybody involved. That's a wonderful thing. And I also love the people of Smithville. They're just the salt of the earth kind of people. Their values are strong, and they care about each other. We learned that earlier this week when a tornado blew through your area, and the outpouring of community concern was just amazing. And so we do appreciate our friends in Smithville. So concerning this COVID-19 crisis that we're in, it is a historic public health crisis. Fortunately, we don't experience these very often. In fact, likely not again in our lifetime will we see anything like this. As of today, we have 125 cases in Bastrop County confirmed. 35 of those have recovered, and we've had the 2 fatalities. One was a leading citizen there in the Smithville community. All the information about the numbers are on a dashboard that is posted on the Office of Emergency Management website, and all the citizens can go there and drill down into that information and see exactly how many cases are per zip code and so forth. So we want to keep everybody as informed as we can. I first issued a declaration of disaster on March the 16th. That was a Monday. It was about that time that we began to hear about COVID-19 and about social distancing and about the pandemic that was striking much of America. And since that time, we've taken some huge steps to try to mitigate the effects of it. The governor and I each issued some executive orders to try to make people understand how serious this matter was, and some steps that they could take to try to protect themselves and their loved ones and their families. And I appreciate the response that we've had from that. So I think we're in a good position right now. The curve has maybe leveled out here in Central Texas especially. And I think we're in a good place, April.
Thank you, Judge. And I certainly, on behalf of the citizens of Smithville, appreciate your kind words. We all try really hard to work together. And unfortunately, we have all of us had to, as a county and as a city, respond to many, many disasters over the last several years. And I think that's made us stronger as a community. And our county leaders, of course, have stepped up time and again and to help us through these terrible times. As you know, our Smithville businesses are suffering pretty badly right now, as are businesses all over the country. Retail sales are severely curtailed, with many stores closed completely until very recently. Restaurants were restricted to takeout, curbside, and delivery only, and are now really just at about 25% capacity. What would you say to our businesses as we make our way through this crisis and continuing this reopening process?
Well, April, I would say to everyone that as Mother used to tell me when I thought the sky was falling or things were terrible, she would say to me, son, this too shall pass. And, she was raised Actually, my mother was born the year of the what's known as the Spanish flu, 1918. She was an infant during that flu epidemic, and I'm sure her parents and grandparents worried about her own health and cared for her very strictly during that period of time. And then she, as many of our parents and grandparents, were raised during the Great Depression, and they knew what it was to deal with the stress of failed economy and the loss of jobs and the uncertainty of tomorrow. But again, she would say, "This too shall pass," and it always did pass. It always got better, and behind every cloud is a silver lining. So this is a serious medical health crisis, particularly to the elderly and those with compromised immune systems. So we have to recognize that. But I can tell our business owners, restaurants and shops as well, that there are brighter days ahead, and that our governor is leading us toward, in phases, toward getting those businesses back open. I know 25% capacity is not very much when a restaurant really needs much more than that to pay the bills and to keep their cook staff and their wait staff online. But it is a step in a process, and I believe that in a couple of weeks we'll see phase 2, which will open up those businesses to even more capacity. I personally, April, am trying to eat out lunch every day. I'm going into some restaurant locally or some cafe every day just to say thank you to those folks who are they're just really, they're going the second mile. They're doing amazing things to keep their businesses open, keep their employees working, keep their cook staff cooking. And I just want to say thank you. And I know many of you do that as well. So try to get out and about in safe manner. I wear my face covering going in, and I wear it coming back out again, and I'll continue to do that. But I think all of us can say to our local businesses, particularly our small or mom and pop operations, the ones that are our friends and neighbors in our communities, how much we appreciate their dedication by patronizing them, by going into their business and buying something, spending a little time and money there, and being generous when we tip.
Yes, that's very good, and I appreciate you saying that, Judge. And I'll remind our listeners that if you're not certain where all the places are here in Smithville where you can shop or go pick up to-go orders, check the Chamber's new online shopping guide, shopinsmithville.com. It's just an easier way to find all of our restaurants and retail spaces as you go out and support and shop local, because we all want all of our restaurants and businesses to still be here when this is all over. I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's podcast, the Elgin Courier. Thank you for supporting the Smithville Chamber. Judge, county and city leaders have been working closely with the Bastrop County Emergency Operations Center for the past nearly 2 months in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Can you talk a little bit about the EOC's efforts?
Yes, I can, April, and you said 2 months. It's been close to 3 months now. How time flies when you're having this much fun.
That's right.
Huh? So I'm very proud of our team of leading this response for the whole county. It involves folks from Smithville and the city of Bastrop and Elgin as well. Our ESDs are involved. Christine Files, a relatively new emergency management coordinator and deputy director of emergency management for me here at the county, has done an amazing job. Dr. Desmar Walks, a local physician that many people know and respect, has been our county health authority for many years. And when she learned about this pandemic, she came to me and she said, "Judge, you're going to need a lot of help, and I'm available. I'm going to make myself available to you full time for however long it takes for us to get through this." And so I have her at my side. She's in our offices all day long, every day, helping us with this COVID response. A total of about 75 dedicated professionals, firefighters, first responders, emergency management coordinators, and personnel. It's just been an amazing effort. So we're involved in testing. In fact, we've done about 1,000 tests here in the county. We're involved in arranging for housing, and we put up some folks who had to have temporary housing. Some of our first responders have needed housing so that they didn't go home and expose their own families. We've had a hotline set up. So far, we've fielded over 1,500 calls to our hotline, answering questions that always come up during these kinds of emergencies. And then we've had our public information office sending out news releases and press releases to keep the people informed about where we are. There's been special attention paid to situational awareness, to operations, to finance, tracking every dollar of expenditure going into this, because chances are FEMA will help reimburse us to some extent the costs that we've expended in fighting this disaster. And then, of course, our safety officer. All of us working together have been a wonderful team, and it really has been a strong team effort. This has been a rapidly changing event, as you well know. I mean, we watch the national news conferences and then the governor's news conference, and every few days something changes, something significant changes. And so we're having to make adjustments on the fly and to be light on our feet, so to speak, so that we stay current with what's going on. But all in all, it's been an amazing effort. And as you mentioned, April, unfortunately here in Bastrop County, we do know a little bit about disaster, and we know how to work together to deal with disaster. It's no secret to any of your listeners that in the past 8 years, this will be our 8th federally declared disaster. Amazing to think of that. In a county our size, with our population, 8 federally declared disasters in 8 years. Well, we've been there and done that. So we know how to respond, and I'm thankful that we are responding as a team, and that we're working together to keep everybody safe and think about the future.
Well, and that's a perfect segue into my final question for you, Judge. And I appreciate all of that information you just gave our listeners about the EOC. I'd like to also say, on behalf of our chamber here and the citizens of Smithville, at least, I want to give a big shout out to Chris Files. I think she's done a fantastic job, particularly given the short straw she drew in such an amazing response requirement to an event that was absolutely unprecedented. I really appreciate her hard work, and I've told her that personally, and I want to say that here as well.
Well, thank you.
Yes, of course. Now, finally, I want to ask for some positives. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judge.
I was going to say I will share that personal message with Christine because she has done an amazing job. Thank you.
Yes, she has, and I appreciate. She's very dedicated and very organized, and I appreciate that. She works really hard, and she does a good job, including the chambers of commerce. She works hard to keep us involved, and she lets us sit in on the situational update meetings early in the morning each day, and we really appreciate being kept in the loop so that we can keep our member businesses updated on what's happening. But finally, I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit about projects or important updates that the county's working on or planning over the next year or so in Bastrop County to give us all a little something to look forward to that is not necessarily COVID-19 related.
Well, I'll be happy to do that, to talk about something other than COVID-19. And although much of what we do for the next several months will be related to COVID-19, but there are many positive things happening here that we need to be reminded of. For one thing, we're in the middle of a once every 10 years census count. And this is so important. I just want your watchers and listeners to be reminded that everybody counts, and therefore we all need to be counted. And if you haven't already responded to the census, please do that. And if you know anybody, if you come in contact with anybody, just say a positive word about how important the census is. We really do need to count every nose in Bastrop County, and we need to know where they live. Much of our future response will be based on where people live. We need to know where education needs to focus, where healthcare needs to be, where food services and medical care needs to be focused. And so all of that has to do with where people live. So it's not just a matter of how many of us there are, but it's where we are. So that's very important. But we're also working on some major infrastructure projects here. As you drive between Bastrop and Smithville, you see some construction there. near where Harmon Road hits Highway 71. That's going to be the intersection of a new ingress-egress that's going to help empty the folks out of Tahitian Village, Cala Vista, and parts of Pine Forest in the next emergency evacuation process. And so that project is ongoing, and we're excited to be getting that underway. We're also working on a new community center for here in Bastrop. It's going to be a county-owned facility. We've leased land from the city of Bastrop up by the rodeo arena. And when we get that building built, it will be a community center. It will also be a permanent home for our Texas Agricultural Extension programming, our 4-H and FFA programming, and also for our long-term recovery team, an amazing group of people who, during all these disasters, whenever we get through with the initial response, when we get into the long-term recovery process, a part of a disaster response, that's when we turn over the reins to the long-term recovery team, and they've done an amazing job over these past 8 years. In fact, by the way, that's where we found Christine Files, if you remember, April. She stepped up 8 years ago and took the reins and did some amazing work after the big fire, and then after the Hidden Pines fire as well. So she proved her mettle during those times. But that's going to happen here in the next year or so, and we're looking forward to getting that building built. And then we're working on a new bridge over the Colorado River, south of the existing bridges. And then as you drive through Bastrop, you see all the improvements that are made to Highway 71, including some access roads on each side of the Colorado River Bridge. And then if you go on further west, you're going to be seeing some new improvements for access for overpasses out between Bastrop and Austin on Highway 71. And, whether we work in Austin or Travis County or not, or whether we just take our loved ones to the airport, or whether we go in for recreation or medical appointments, all of us use Highway 71 a lot. And it'll be so great to have those overpasses and eliminate some of those traffic lights. We continue to work on the other intersections, and hopefully the funding will be available in the next few months or years for that as well. So, April, there's just a lot of positive things going on in Bastrop County now, as always. And it's great that you ask about it, because sometimes we get so focused in on dealing with the problems that are on our shoulders today that we forget about the future. But the future's bright for Bastrop County. I believe that we'll work ourselves through this pandemic and come out the other side stronger and better. I think we will see some permanent changes. We need to always be more aware of the contagion of all viruses and germs. Just the simple things like washing our hands and covering our coughs and sneezes. This is a pretty harsh reminder that those things are important and they work. And so I expect us, hopefully we will learn some things that will change our permanent behavior. But all in all, I think we'll get back to being who we are: friendly, loving, hugging people. And I'm looking forward to that myself. Thank you, April, for giving me this opportunity to chat with your folks today.
Of course, Judge, and I really appreciate you. You are always willing to come and speak to our Smithville businesses and our members here at the Chamber. Anytime I call, you're always available, and I certainly appreciate that. So thank you, Judge, for appearing with us today for our Smithville Chamber Chatter podcast. We invite our listeners to join us next week when our guest will be Judy Bergeron, Smithville Public Library Director. Until then, we'll see you on Main Street. Thank you for listening to Smithville Chamber Chatter with your host, April Daniels. If you'd like to be a guest, email us at april.daniels@smithvilletx.org. Between now and our next episode, be sure to check out the Chamber's website at www.smithvilletx.org. Until then, we'll see you on Main Street.